MMORPG, a genre built upon players' interactions with one another. So what is it like when a player actively avoids such interactions and chooses to solo the game as much as possible? Is such behavior detrimental to the player's experience, or is it actually beneficial? TLDR, it depends on what kind of experience you want out of an MMO. Let me elaborate through my experience of playing Final Fantasy XIV as a mostly solo player with 2 positives and 2 negatives. Before we start, let me quickly define what I mean by playing solo. I don't mean playing the game without interacting with any other players or even NPCs, like what Rust Gaming is doing right now. Great series, by the way, would highly recommend. But more so like a player who don't have a friend group that he'll consistently do content with, spend most of his time doing single player content, and do the majority of the group content with other random players. And with that out of the way, let's begin. Starting with the positive. As a solo player, I get to play the game at my own pace, or translates to do whatever the I want whenever I want to. This is perhaps the biggest reason as to why I tend to avoid joining any sorts of group, since to me, all groups come with a level of obligations to other players. Let's say you and your friend Bud decide to farm a mount one day. After 3 hours, you have finally got the mount, but Bud still doesn't have it. But you are already really done with the content. What would you do? I would assume most responsible, civilized, and non-toxic people will either keep on farming the content until Bud also gets it, or suggest another date for farming together again. If you choose the former, then your time with the game is compromised to a degree, as you may have other contents that you wish to do at that point of time. And if you choose the latter, then that's a promise you need to fulfill some days eventually. Not to mention, being in Bud's place in that kind of situation also sucks. The actual scenario may be vastly different, since different people will have different reactions or solutions to those cases, but obligations like this have always scared me, and I'm not personally adept at dealing with those things. Also, being a very scatter-minded person, there can be a million things I wish to do in one play session. I may just stick to one eventually, but the thought of being stuck on one particular thing not out of my own choice is detrimental to my enjoyment of the game. Playing solo on the other hand obviously wouldn't have such restrictions. Even when I'm playing with a random group for harder content, I can just leave when I'm no longer feeling like it or got what I want in most cases. Moving on to number 2, Final Fantasy XIV actually has a lot of soloable content. Relic weapons, a lot of mount grinds, deep dungeons, PvP, and gold saucers are all great things to do alone in this game. While having a group will make some of these contents much easier, most of them are not that much harder to do alone. The sheer quantity and the sheer depth you can go with these contents are to me comparable to a full-on single-player game. Not to mention that some of these contents, namely the deep dungeons, actively rewards the players for completing them alone, and they are some of the most prestigious accomplishments a player can get from this game. The best part about this is that as a solo player, you can actually stay quite patch relevant in this game in terms of item level. The newest raids do not require a pre-made group for its normal version. You can also farm different elegant tombstone to exchange for the second to best armor set in the patch. You can also buy or craft high level armor sets, and you can farm out the newest relic weapons. It is as if the developer of FF14 recognizes the solo players as a player base in general and caters to its needs in so many different ways. I have played the game almost religiously for almost 2 years at this point, and never once have I felt bored with the contents as a, again, mostly solo player. Not to say that I still have a vast quantities of the game to discover, and it is an experience like this that enables me to keep being comfortable as a solo player. Now switching to the negative sides of things, let's follow up on the previous point. While there are many things you can do as a solo player in this game, there are also numerous things that you won't be able to do unless you join at least some sorts of groups. To start with, Savage Raids and Extreme Trials, especially the newest one, since for the older ones that can be run on sync, the difficulty is much lower and you won't necessarily need a static, or at least wouldn't be so much dependable on it to finish the content. Instead, for those older contents, you can simply create or join a random party. But for the newest raids that gives the best weapons and armors at a given time, and the newest extreme trials that give the legendary mount in an expansion, I personally won't recommend using a group of random people, since those can be much harder due to the potential gaps among participants' experience to the instance, which can then lead to frustrating attempt to clear the instance. And even when your group gets good enough to clear one instance, it is unclear when a player may simply leave, or if you will have the same group say the next day or the week after. Not having the same group in these case scenarios will obviously have you go through the experience gap all over again. I used random group for these 4 Endwalker extreme trial mounts, and let me tell you, I am not doing that again. Speaking of the ultimate fights, which gives the glamour weapons and the legend titles, require a stable group even more so than the other two. Because ultimate fights are the hardest content for groups, most players won't even consider to use party finders for ultimates, though it's possible. When I was clearing the ultimates, I was lucky enough to find statics that were willing to take me in and clear the fights eventually, but that was with, in the worst case scenario, nearly a month of searching. All of these would be a lot easier, let's say if I am in a free company that has a dedicated group to these contents every day or week. Then for the second negative thing, I haven't really get to enjoy the FF14 community. This would have been fine for some other games, but FF14 is perhaps the most well known for its positive community. While I personally do not mind this for the reasons mentioned earlier, it may dissuade a lot of people from becoming solo players. As for you, there may be a sense of loneliness when you are walking around through the main cities, seeing all the players chatting with one another. Other than its potential emotional damage, there is also actually a legitimate disadvantage for being solo: all the FC buffs, which ranges from giving more experience to any battle content up to 15%, to more payouts in Gold Saucer up to 15%, more rewards in PvP for 15%, reduction of teleportation fee up to 40%, and etc. These are genuinely great buffs for any players, especially beginners, that you simply won't get to enjoy if you are not in the FC. Now for full disclosure, I am in a free company, and it is for these specific reasons. This FC has a couple hundred members. I may have spoken in the group chat for once or twice and have never joined the Discord. I don't believe my FC has a group of dedicated hardcore players, and to be honest, even if it does, I won't join it so that I do not become more of an integral part of the FC than I already am. Overall, how do I feel as a solo player, and would I recommend it? The answer is, as mentioned in the beginning of the video, it depends on what kind of a person you are and what types of an experience you wish to get out of an MMO. If you are the type that wish to make a bunch of friends in the game, or have friends that either invited you or joined the game with you, then you more than certainly shouldn't or probably wouldn't even consider to be a solo player. If you care about the hardcore or the harder contents that a game has to offer, and that is really all you care about, then you should definitely find a group and not play solo. But if you're like me, who don't really care about making friends, have your own plans when it comes to playing and don't really wish to be disturbed, and wants to do the harder contents only sometimes and is willing to spend time looking for groups for randoms, then soloing may as well be suitable for you. I personally love soloing the game, and I don't see myself finding or joining a friend group anytime in the future, and that is just me, and that's how I like to play an MMO. And there you have it, my takes on what is it like to play solo. Leave a comment to let me know what you think and maybe your experience in playing solo as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.